Hey folks, Nick here from another Booktube channel, and today I'll be talking about other Booktubers' top books of 2023. The year recently ended, obviously, and the great thing that happens on Booktube at this time of year is everybody starts putting out their top books that they read, and their bottom books that they read. I myself did a complete ranking video of all 86 books that I completed in 2023. Check that out. But other booktubers doing the same thing, and I'm watching these videos and I'm adding books that they're mentioning to my TBR for 2024, and I thought, hey, maybe this is a video idea. So I thought that I would tell you what I'm adding to my TBR for 2024, maybe something that they talk about that I haven't mentioned on the channel catches your eye, maybe you'll add it to your TBR as well. There are 5 books here that I've highlighted as being added to my TBR. The first one up is called Fluke by James Herbert. I heard about this book from Cliff's Dark Gems. He had this as one of his top books of the year, and immediately caught my eye because it is a book about a dog that apparently thinks he used to be a man. And I haven't looked into it too much beyond that, but Cliff's recommendation made it sound really interesting. And oddly enough, this is only the first of 2 books that are on this list. I have 5 books I mentioned. 2 of them are from the points of views of dogs. So this is the first one. I don't know where things go like with that premise in Fluke, but I am very curious to see. I like the idea of having it be from the perspective of the dog, and this dog having like an identity crisis. So that sounded like a lot of fun. I got like an ebook version of it while I was watching Cliff's video. Like, he mentioned it and I immediately went and I found one. So that's the first one. Next up, and I'm not going to talk about the second dog book right away. I'll pad this out a little bit. The second book is Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt. I actually heard about this from 2 separate channels that had it in their top 10. Criminali had it, I believe, as his top book of the year, his number 1. And MJ from Reading This Life had this in her top 10 as well. This sounds like a really interesting book. It is apparently a haunted house book. From what I've gathered, these 3 friends go into this haunted house. Something terrible and unspeakable happens in there, and then they kind of separate and they lose touch with each other. But then they come back together to go back to the house to like confront what occurred there. So this sounds like it has the opportunity to be a very challenging book, a potentially disturbing book, one that's gonna, make me uncomfortable and face things that, I'm not used to facing in a novel. So I'm excited about it, a little nervous about it. Disturbing isn't usually my thing, but I'm, branching out, and with 2 booktubers that I really like recommending it and putting it on their top list, I figured, I got to give it a shot. The third book, something completely different, is Predator Concrete Jungle by Nathan Archer. This recommendation came from the page, Andrew's channel. He had this as one of his top 20 trashy books of the year. And it caught my eye because I recognized the name Concrete Jungle as a comic book. The first Predator comic ever was a 4-issue miniseries that is now known as Concrete Jungle. I don't know if it's ever mentioned on the actual comics itself, but that's how I knew it, from Dark Horse Comics. And I actually really like that series. I like a lot of the Predator comics. I think they've had a lot of great artists over the years and done some really fun stories. A lot of clunkers too. And that one in particular, I remember enjoying. It's been a while since I've read it, but I do remember I did like it. And when Andrew mentioned this, I was like, oh, I didn't know that there was a novelization also of that story. That sounds neat. And he also said that the novelization is a lot better than the comic. which I don't doubt, because with comics, your storytelling capabilities are restricted, like in terms of how deep you can go. So I have no doubt that a novelization can provide more points of view, more information, set more of a tone, things like that. Um, and from what I remember of the actual story, I think it's about Arnold Schwarzenegger's brother. Well, not the character that he played, Dutch. It's about his brother, who's like a cop in New York, and the Predator comes to New York and does Predator things. And I believe this was written before Predator 2 came out. So this was like the sequel to Predator before Predator went to LA to mess with Danny Glover's retirement. So yeah, really excited to find out that this exists and going to give it a shot. Fourth book, and this is going to be the other dog one, Hellhound by Ken Greenhall. This one was also featured on Andrew's list. It came from the page. It was also on Crystal's list from Fiber Artsy. And this one's a little bit of a cheat because I did know about this book and I was already interested in it, but I wasn't like going out of my way to actually read it. Like I heard about it last year, and I had that thought where like, oh, if I come across it, I'll read it. But I never really came across it. I never sought it out. But now two different booktubers have it amongst their top books of the year. So it sounds like a lot of fun. In this case, it's another dog point of view book, but in this case, the dog is like a bull terrier who is psychopathic and homicidal. So it's like Cujo, but completely from the point of view of Cujo. I think completely. I don't know. But that sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds really trashy. Sounds like some fun animal horror. And I know that a reprint of it came out last year, like an actual modern reprint. So it should be readily available. So I'm going to try to check that out. Yeah, we'll see. I'm looking forward to that one. And the last book I'll talk about here that I'm adding to my TBR is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This was the top book for Alex from Alex Unabridged. And I've heard of this book before as well. I'm pretty sure Criminale mentioned it on one of his. And actually, was it this year or was it last year? I can't remember. But this one has also like been on my radar, but I hadn't made the jump. So Alex mentioning it as his number one really enticed me. This is a science fiction novel, or I think it's really, really short. And this one, I actually didn't really look up. So I'm just going to read this description here on Storygraph. So this is the first in a series, the Monk and Robot series. And the synopsis is, it's been centuries since the robots of Panga gained self-awareness and laid down their tools. Centuries since they wandered en masse into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Centuries since they faded into myth and urban legend. One day, the life of a tea monk is upended by the arrival of a robot, there to honor the old promise of checking in. The robot cannot go back until the question of what do people need is answered. But the answer to that question depends on who you ask and how. They're going to need to ask it a lot. So, and Becky Chambers' new series asks, in a world where people have what they want, does having more matter? So it sounds really interesting, and I've just heard from multiple people that this is a really, really great book. And seeing it on Alex's list reminded me that it was a thing that I was interested in. And because it's apparently really short and the second one's out, maybe I could even just do both at once this year. So that's all. Let me know if your TBR was affected by any booktubers, maybe by me, but by any of the other ones as well. There's a lot out there, and I'm always interested in hearing some more reading recommendations. Let me know your favorite reads of 2023 in the comments below, or your least favorite. Those can be fun to talk about too. But with that being said, thank you very much for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.